Long time no YouTube. I feel like I went through a period of like not knowing what I wanted to do social media wise. So I hadn't really been posting that much TikToks and I kind of stopped posting on YouTube. But now that we're going into the new year, I feel like I have a little more clarity of what I want to do social media wise. And I do want to keep doing YouTube because I do genuinely enjoy it. And I genuinely enjoy talking to a camera and talking about books. And I'm gonna try and post a TikTok every day because I think I do want to start taking social media a little bit more seriously. So, with that being said, I want to do a 2024 reading wrapped. I read 53 books this year between like my classes and my surgery and the traveling and everything. So I feel like that was pretty good for me, 53 books between like everything that I had going on this year. So yeah, we're gonna go through which book I enjoyed the most during the 12 months of the year. So let's get started. Okay, so I believe I read a total of 4 books in January, and the one that I enjoyed the most was Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. Abby Jimenez is literally one of my favorite authors ever of all time. I have all her books. The only book that I haven't read is Just for the Summer, and I plan on reading that very soon. And I know she's coming out with another book next year, which I'm really excited about. But Part of Your World was just another book in her saga that I completely fell in love with. My memory is a little foggy. I read this all the way in January and I already have horrible memory, but this is a trope where he's a little more on the poor side, and I really wouldn't even call him poor. He's definitely not poor, but like he comes from a small town, and he just isn't like, you know, high class. And like Alexis comes from like high class, like big city. Like they literally come from 2 different worlds. And I loved that aspect of this book. I'm normally not a fan of that trope, but she wrote it so well. Like she writes everything so well. With Abby Jimenez books, there's always life lessons to be learned in there. And that's why I always recommend them to literally anyone. Like, if you want to get back into reading, start with Abby Jimenez because it's not just romance. There are so many life lessons in her books that I can't even recount. Just read her books because the life lessons are amazing. In February, I read a total of 5 books. I had to bring up my reading journal because I couldn't remember how many books I read each month. And in January, I read 5. In February, I also read 5 books, and my favorite of those 5 books was Heartless by Elsie Silver. And February was the month that I started reading Elsie Silver, and I have not been able to go back. I will rave and rave and rave and rave about her books and the way that her series are all technically connected to each other. And I loved how she set up this world. I started with the Chestnut Spring series, and I absolutely fell in love with these characters. I obviously read Flawless first. But in the month of February, Heartless literally stole my heart. I love me some Cade Eaton. Cade and Willa are literally the perfect grumpy sunshine. It was written so well. I love this book. I feel like anyone who reads this series is like a huge fan of Cade Eaton, and for every reason that there could possibly be a reason to obsess over a bookman, he has it. She's another author that I love her writing so much, and she writes her characters in a way that their love feels so real. And I remember just like in every single Elsie Silver book that I read this year, when I wrote it down in my book journal, that's just always one of the comments that I had, is that every time I read a book by her, the love seems so tangible. Like it seems so real. Like it could actually happen in real life. And I feel like sometimes when you have romance, that's an aspect that's missing. Sometimes it feels a little too fictional. Like it can never actually happen. And that's okay. And that's definitely okay. But I love that she writes in a way that it feels so real. Like these characters, they just feel real. Their love feels real. It feels like it can actually happen. And she definitely got me obsessed with cowboys. In March, we read 6 books and we continued with the Elsie Silver train. I finished the Chestnut Spring series in March. My favorite of the entire series is this book right here. And let me tell you why. Theo Silva. I love Cade, but I love Theo more. Like, Oh my God. The reverse grumpy sunshine, the accidental pregnancy, Theo. The words that this man has said made me go feral. Theo and Winter are literally one of my favorite couples of 2024. I knew Winter was gonna have a redemption arc, and when I got to her book, I was like, oh my God, I love this woman. I love this woman. She's a queen. If I could read this book again for the first time, I would appreciate it a lot more. I would. I would appreciate it a lot more. In April, I read 3 books, and my favorite of those books was King of Greed by Anna Huang. Anna can write no wrong. You know what I mean? Like, everything she writes is just gold. There's nothing, she can't write a bad book. Let me just say, I am not a huge fan of the marriage and trouble trope. I don't typically enjoy it. I typically don't pick up a book that has that trope. But as I said, I pick up any Anna Huang book, and she did not disappoint. Alessandra is a very, 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 very strong FMC, because if I were her, I would have forgave him the second he said, I'm sorry. But I think that this book was really well written, and I actually, this isn't much of a spoiler, but maybe skip ahead if you want, if you haven't read this book. I thought that writing in the divorce was a really good idea, and I'm glad that the marriage wasn't saved so quickly that it didn't feel like there was anything wrong in the first place, you know? Like, I feel like those characters, they had to go through getting a divorce and being separate to actually fix what was broken in their marriage, and I'm glad that Dominic was able to accept that. Like, he wasn't very forceful. Like, he understood why Alessandra needed space, why she wanted to get a divorce, because at the end of the day, he wasn't the man that she married when they were younger. He wasn't the man that he was when they were in college and when he loved her and was like very obsessed with her. And I'm not saying that the love was ever lost between them, but he just needed to get back to being that man. And I'm glad that he did. This story was very, very beautifully written. But I definitely love Dominic and Alessandra. They were amazing couple. Love them so much. Okay, in May, I also read 3 books, and the one that I liked the most was The Wall of Winnipeg and Me by Mariana Zapata. This is the first book that I read by Mariana Zapata, and she is definitely the queen of slow burn. But she writes it in a way that it doesn't feel very slow. Like, it definitely took Vanessa and Aiden to get together a long time. Like, it took them a long time to get together. But in a way that made sense. Like, it made sense for these characters. Like, she had been working for him for, I think, like 2 years. And to rush into a relationship is crazy. There was the fake dating aspect that I really loved. But I also really loved the fact that, like, it just wasn't in their nature to love each other so fiercely, so quickly. And I love how that was written into this book. I love that they took their time and they actually, like, understood their feelings for each other. And Aiden, I love my big grumpy bulldozer. I just love Aiden Graves so much. I think that she wrote these characters really well, and she paced their story in a way that wasn't like so torturously slow that I couldn't get through, but it was just slow enough. And like, there was like little parts that were like, oh my God, like this is so cute. And then like a few chapters later, I'm like, oh my God, like, this is so cute again. And like, and the cuteness just like, it kept like getting like faster and faster. It was like cute, 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 love, 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 love. Like, it felt like a perfectly paced love story between 2 characters who aren't each other's biggest fans. But then we learned that Aiden was like her biggest fan ever. I have From Luco with Love. I read that book and I really liked it. That was, again, like really good pacing, definitely slow burn, but it made sense for the story. And then I have All Roads Lead Here, which I'm actually going to read pretty soon. I haven't read it yet, but I'm excited for it, and I definitely love Mariana Zapata, and I love her books, and I love her characters, and I love The Wall of Winnipeg and Me. The month of June was a month of dark romance for me. I read 3 dark romance books, all which were pretty good, but there was one that definitely stood out to me the most. That was Brutal Prince by Sophie Lark. So let me give you a little background of my Sophie Lark readings. I read the Sinner and Saint duet. I think that's what it's called. Yes, it's There Is No Devil, There Are No Saints. Like, it's right there. And I liked it, but I felt like it wasn't like, I thought I would like it more. So I was a little skeptical. I had already bought this entire series, so it wasn't like I wasn't going to read it, but I was skeptical. So it took me a while to get here because I read those 2 books last December, like a year ago, and it took me until June to pick up her next book. I was just scared. Like, I was nervous that I wasn't gonna like this series, and I had already bought the entire series, so I was going to force myself to read it. But this is the first series in the Brutal Birthright series. I believe that's what the series is called, and I was absolutely obsessed with it. I finished it in 2 days. They did the arranged marriage, enemies to lovers, in the best possible way for a mafia book. It was so good. It was so good, but also so funny. Like, I just remember reading this book and laughing so much. Like, these characters, the way that I can't even like describe like the banter and their relationship and how they like loathed each other. Like, oh my god, there are strawberries on this cover because my man's Callum is allergic to strawberries, and on their wedding day, Ada, my girl, my bad bee, Ada, ate strawberries and kissed him so he'd have an allergic reaction and die. The way that their story played out, like, she set their library on fire, like, he drowned her, like, it was so much back and forth that, like, when you say it sounds horrible, but, like, when you're reading it, it's actually hilarious. But in the other books, Ada and Cal's relationship is even better. Like, it was great in this book, but in the other books, it's even better. Because, like, you know how, like, the first couple of every series is going to be like 1,000 times better in the other books. That's like Alex and Ava and the Twisted Love series. Like, their book, amazing, chef's kiss. But in the other books, and literally all of Anna's other books, like even in the Kings of Sin series, they are so prominent. Like, they are there. Like, Alex is always the man of the hour because he's always saving them. And in every single book, it's always expressed how much Alex loves Ava, even if she's not even in the book. Back to Ada and Callum, I love them, and I love their story, and it was beautifully hilarious in the best way possible. It's just really good. I haven't read the rest of the Brutal Birthright series this year. I'm definitely going to get to it next year. I read Brutal Prince, Stolen Heir, Savage Lover, and they were all really good. I enjoyed them, but I definitely enjoyed this one the most. July, I read 4 books, and the book that I have not been able to stop thinking about since I read it is The Freaking Graham Effect by Elle Kennedy, which is by far the best book she has ever written. Sorry, hands down, I gave this 5 stars. I loved this book with every fiber of my being and every bone in my body. Writer can get it. But reading this book was a vibe. Like, I loved that the off-campus characters were here. I loved that Briar U characters were here. I love Gigi and Ryder. I love them so much. I don't know. I think it was so nostalgic to have, like, the off-campus people in this book and even some of the Briar U people. I think it was just so nostalgic. Some people didn't like the ending. Like, I heard that a lot on Book Talk, that, like, this is a spoiler, so maybe skip past this part. Why did they get married? Like, it was too fast. Like, da-da-da-da. I thought it was perfect. And if you come for Gigi and Ryder, you're coming for me. And I promise you're not going to win. I thought it was so cute the way that they love each other so much. And they couldn't wait. And so they got out of college. They got married in college. They eloped. And I thought it was the cutest thing ever. And I loved the ending of this book. I read 2 books only in August. They were really big books. And that's my excuse. But I was also very busy in August. So in July, I started, I don't really know what the series is called. It's a dark romance. The book that I like the most in this series is The Sinner. In August, I read The Sinner and The Sacrifice. Over there. Right there. And I liked The Sinner better out of okay, I liked the Sinner better because I liked the storyline better and it made more sense to me. I liked the characters in The Sacrifice better. I loved Tyson Crawford. I loved him so much, but their storyline was a little shaky for me and it wasn't my favorite. Their storyline was my favorite. This is Ellie and Easton. Sin. And I like their storyline a lot better. Not that I can recall much of it, because I can't. I know that, like, Ellie and Sin knew each other since they were little, because their brothers were friends, maybe. I could be wrong about that. But I just enjoyed their tropes and their storylines a lot better. Definitely check your trigger warnings. These books are crazy. They are not for the weak. I was almost not able to get through it, but I did. It's not like... It's just very graphic and very... a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot. So just, if you're thinking about reading The Sinner, The Sacrifice, The Ritual, please check your trigger warning. Month of September, I did read 3 books. I read my first mystery thriller. I read The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. I didn't think that I was going to enjoy it. I enjoyed it. I didn't enjoy it as much as the book that I'm about to tell you about, but I enjoyed it, and I felt like I just wanted to mention it because it was my first time reading a book of that genre, and I actually didn't hate it. Will I read more of that genre? Probably not. The book that I enjoyed most in September is King of Sloth by Anna Huang, which makes number 2 for her. But hear me out. This might be one of my favorite books she's written. So, fun fact, I went to Canada. I went to Canada in August, and I hadn't even read King of Sloth yet, but they had the Indigo exclusive version of King of Sloth, so I got it because you can't get it in America, and I was like, why not? I'm in Canada, let me get it. And then I read King of Sloth, and I was like, this is possibly the best Anna Huang book that I've ever read. And so I went to her signing for my birthday on October 24th, and I got it signed. Oh, that's not... That was so anticlimactic. I got it signed, so she signed my book, and she put a heart. I absolutely am in love with this book. Let me get both copies. I'm absolutely in love with this book. So when I went to her signing, I got King of Sloth signed. I also got... Oh, you can't see her books. Well, you kind of can. I have a whole Anna Huang shelf right here. So I got King of Sloth signed. I got Twisted Love and Twisted Lies. And I got them signed. And then I also got the Striker signed because it was her release party. So she was... that was like my ticket or whatever. So that is also signed, but I haven't read it yet. I'm going to read it next year sometime when I get to it. And I also heard that book is super good. But King of Sloth is right up there for me with Alex and Ava and Christian and Stella. I think that my driving factor in loving this book so much is that I feel like I am Sloane. Sloane is me. Me and her are one and the same. Like, I related to her so much, and I loved Xavier. I loved how patient he was with Sloane. Like, look at them. Look at them. Like, no, like, I can't talk about them without wanting to tear up. If I'm recalling correctly, they did have a 3rd act breakup, but it made sense to the story. And sometimes, like, an author will put in a 3rd act breakup and it does not make sense to the story. I think maybe it made sense because it's probably a decision that I would have made myself. And I think that when I can relate so much to a character, it makes me love the book like 1,000 times more. Like, it makes me love the book so much more because I can see myself through that character. I can see myself making those decisions. And I can even say that I think I relate it more to Stella and Christian than Alex and Ava. But I think these are the characters that I've related to the most. And even like some aspects of Xavier I could relate to. I just think that because I relate to these characters so strongly and I loved their story and I loved the slow burn of it and how it was paced, it wasn't rushed, it really, really made sense to the characters. And I feel like that's been a big theme this year in the books that I've read. My favorite part of this story was just how patient Xavier was with Sloane. Like, he didn't rush her. Like, you know, like she isn't quick to love, and that's okay. Like, not every person has to be quick to love. And I feel like the representation of that in this book is so amazing, because I'm not a person who's quick to love. I'm just not. And so I love these characters. They're my babies. I love them so much. So yeah, this is definitely one of my favorite reads of the year. Hands down. This was 5 stars for me. Like, one of my favorite books ever of all time. The second book in October that I very, very thoroughly enjoyed reading is a book that I'm not sure that I planned on ever reading, but after I went to Anna's signing, I met a lot of amazing people, and one of them I still keep in contact with. And so she was telling me that she really loved, I don't think she hadn't read this series specifically, but she really loved Once Upon a Broken Heart, like that series. And I know that Caraval is a series that comes before that, so I wanted to read it first, and I am obsessed with it. Reading this book, you don't know what is real and what isn't. And so when things happen and you think that they're actually happening, and then a few pages later it didn't happen, you tend to yell a lot. The magic and the fantasy, I mean, honestly, the magical elements of this book are unmatched. I think that it's the first fantasy series that I've ever read where the magical elements are just so amazing and so beautifully written. Caraval follows, well, I'll say the Caraval series follows the 2 sisters, Scarlet and Donatella Dragna. But the first book, Caraval, mostly follows Scarlet Dragna in her quest to save her sister, Donatella, who gets captured by Legend to play the game Caraval, right? And so she goes to Caraval to play this game with Julian Santos. While reading this book, going into it, I didn't think that it was going to be a love story, because it really like heavily focused on Scarlet's love for her sister, Donatella, her younger sister. And so I didn't think that there would be any like love story between Scarlet and Julian, but it unfolded in a way that I was like, wow, like this is a love story, not just between 2 sisters, but between Scarlet and Julian. And it didn't really reveal itself until a lot later in the book. The basis of this series is sisterly love, and I found it really beautiful how they would do anything for each other. Like, they would die for each other. Scarlet and her unending, undying love for her sister, where she would choose her sister over her love, over the love of her life, maybe. And the fact that she had to make that choice. So and this book was not only beautifully written as far as like the magical elements, the fantastical elements, the whimsical elements, it was also beautifully written in the way that the love in this story was just beautifully written. The love between 2 sisters, the love between 2 people who like love each other romantically. It was kind of like everything that you could really ever ask for in a fantasy book, in a fantasy series. And I love the mystery element of it. I loved having to read all the letters. I loved trying to piece together what certain things meant. I loved the fact that a lot of what I read was a lie. It was a twist that I wasn't expecting. This book is one big game. Stephanie Garber is an amazing author, and she writes these amazing, magical, whimsical stories of love, but sisterly and brotherly love. And it was just really good. I read 5 books in November. I read one sci-fi fantasy book that I actually had to read it for my English class. I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. I also read 2 books on my Kindle. I've read Misfits Like Us and Unlucky Like Us. But out of the 5 books that I read, we're going to continue with the Caraval series. I enjoyed these so much. This follows the second sister, Donatella Dragna, and her quest to find her mom. So we learned in the first book that Scarlett and Donatella's mom disappeared 7 years ago. They haven't heard from her, haven't seen her. And this book is basically Donatella trying to find her mom, and she has a lot of difficult choices to make. One of my favorite fantastical elements of this book is the deck of destiny. It really makes everything come to life. It really ties everything together. And Donatella and Dante's love definitely blossoms in this book, but it figures itself out in finale. In finale, all four of them come together. So by then, this is a spoiler, so don't like skip this part if you haven't read this series, because there's really no way around it before I describe this book. Spoiler, 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 skip this part. In finale, we tie it all together. So we have the brothers, Julian and Dante, aka Legend, and we have the sisters, Scarlett and Donatella, and this is literally the finale of Caraval. It's the finale of the show. They're trying to put the fates back into the deck of destiny. There are a lot of plot twists in this book. If you thought that Caraval and Legendary had plot twists, this outdoes it by about 1,000,000 times. The plot twists in this book were so like jaw-dropping and like what the fuck, like that's exactly how the plot twists in this book will make you feel. There are a lot of things that happen in this book that are like, let me go back to the other books and see if I can like find evidence of this. Which you can, which is like one of my favorite parts, is like you can find evidence of like all these plot twists in Caraval and Legendary. And so like reading this book and having everything unravel and like figuring everything out is amazing. And I don't know, I just loved it. Caraval, Legendary, finale, definitely one of my top five fantasy that I've literally ever read. These were late night, 3-4 in the morning, staying up, I couldn't stop saying one more chapter type books. Birds were chirping by the time I was able to put these books down, basically. So yeah, these are my favorite reads of November. That brings us to the last month of the year, December. I read 7 books. 2 of them were on my Kindle. It was Nobody Like Us, and then I read the Christmas novella, A Very Addicted Christmas. I love them. You guys know that like Addicted Calloway, Like Us series, that found family, I will die for. Literally, I would die for them. December was a very good reading month for me, and honestly, it was very, very hard for me to pick my favorites, so I didn't. The first book that I read in December was Wild Eyes by Elsie Silver, and I read Wild Love. I don't remember what month I read it in, or an earlier month, maybe like March, April or March or something, maybe May. But I didn't enjoy it nearly as much as I enjoyed Wild Eyes. I loved Wes and Skylar. I thought that their story was so cute. I absolutely loved the ending of this book. It was very wholesome, and I love that Skylar made the decision for herself. But I think one of my favorite elements of this book was the fact that Wes is a single dad, but also the relationship that he had with his kids and the relationship that Skylar had with his kids. I thought it was so cute. Emmy and Oliver, they're so cute. They are the cutest little kids ever. And I love how their relationship with Skylar was like the founding, like the foundation of Skylar and Wes's relationship. So yeah, I thought it was really cute and I really enjoyed it. It was definitely my favorite of the series so far. Second book that I read and thoroughly enjoyed in the month of December is Taming 7. Taming 7, Claire and Gibbsy. So this is a part of the Boys of Tommen series. It's the most recent addition to the series. You know, with Chloe Walsh books, with these books in general, Boys of Tommen, they are very deep books. These characters go through a lot. They're very dynamic. They have a lot of trauma. And it isn't lost in this book with Gibbsy. And Claire loves Jared. Like, she loves him. She loves him so much. She loves him through everything. She loved him through everything. And I think that one of my favorite parts of this book is that in binding and keeping and 13 and saving and redeeming 6, Gibbsy is known as this like playboy, and like he's crazy and he's all, you know, loves the ladies and whatever. But we find out in his book that that is just not true. And I think that is one of my favorite aspects of it, is that he saved himself for Claire. And I thought that was really, really sweet. And how he was like, I told you, like, you were the only one for me. And like, you know, and like the other books, you wouldn't think that, you know, you would think that Gibbsy has done the deed. But he hasn't, and he saved himself for Claire, and I thought that was so sweet. And everything that Jared has been through was so heartbreaking, and the ending of this book was so heartbreaking. And honestly, hate me if you want, I'm not a Lizzie fan. I picked sides, and I sided with Claire and Gibbsy. Like, I sympathize with Lizzie as much as I can, as far as, you know, she lost her sister in a very, very tragic way, and she thought she was right. At the end of the day, she had no excuse for being so mean, and she had no excuse for taking it out on Jared when he had absolutely nothing to do with it. As far as she knew, he had nothing to do with it. And even still, after everything was revealed, he didn't have anything to do with it. It was her sister's own guilt. And so that's not his fault. And like, at the end of the day, I'm not excited for their book. At the end of the day, I wish we could skip Lizzie and Huey. I'm sorry. Why is there a book next? No! I am, however, looking forward to their book, in the sense that we're most likely, fourth time, almost knocking over that stack. We are most likely going to get a lot of Lizzie and Huey's relationship in the past, because we know that they dated in the past. That's like revealed in this book, that Lizzie and Huey were boyfriend and girlfriend for a while. And I'm excited about getting like that aspect of it. I'm just not excited about having to hear Lizzie go on and on and on. Like, oh my gosh, shut up. Okay, this is actually the last book that I read in December, but I really want to save the best for last. Which isn't this book, but I really enjoyed it, so I'm going to include it. I read Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber, which is an extension of the Caraval series. This series follows Jax, who we meet in... I'm pretty sure we meet Jax in Legendary. Yes, we meet Jax in Legendary. He's also in Finale. And this is his book. It follows Jax and Evangeline Fox. It started out a little slow, just in the beginning. It picked up very quickly. I got hooked, addicted very, very quickly. This book was very action-packed to me, very plot twisty. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. I am very glad that I read the Caraval series first, because it allowed me to sympathize with Jax a lot more in this book, because I know his history. Like, I know what happened in Caraval. I know what happened between him and Donatella. I know that he loved Donatella as much as a fate could love, which was more of an obsession, but he was very upset about her stabbing him in the heart and literally saying she hated him, and, you know, all that, and choosing Legend, which I love. Donatella and Dante, I love them, and I'm glad that they got their happily ever after. I'm excited that Jax is finally going to get his eventually. Just not in this book. I think that Jax is very misunderstood, and because he's a fate, he's always going to be seen as deceptive and ulterior motive, which he is deceptive, and he does always have an ulterior motive, but he can't help it. And I also struggled with Evangeline's character at first, because she was a little slow to develop, but I ended up loving her, and I think she really grew into herself. I think her character definitely expanded just within these pages, and so I'm excited to see how her character keeps growing and keeps expanding. I really liked the ending of this book. This book, like I said, was very plot twisty. So a lot of the things that happened I didn't expect to happen, but that's the beautiful thing about Stephanie Garber books, is she will throw a plot twist at you and you won't see it coming. I think that a lot of the times you read fantasy and sometimes you can see a plot twist coming. Like, you can see a guy that's gonna turn bad or like whatever. But she does it very, very good in a way that like you literally don't see them coming. And even when it comes to Jax, and we know that he's deceptive and he's a fate and he always has an ulterior motive, even some of the stuff that he does you don't see coming. So I really enjoy that about this book and about her other books. But I'm definitely excited to keep going with the series, and I'm excited for Evangeline and Jax's love to prosper, but we haven't gotten there yet. She hates him right now. So the last 2 books that I read in the month of December. Let's talk about Fourth Wing first. The second that I opened this book, I was hooked. You got me. I don't even know where to begin to describe this book. Okay, the first thing that I loved about this book is the enemies to lovers was done very well. I always use the trope enemies to lovers very loosely, and I reserve it for fantasy books only. I know that a lot of romance books are classified as enemies to lovers. I never feel that way because they're not fantasy books. It's very hard for a romance to be enemies to lovers. I say hate to love for romance books. You can not like a person, you can hate a person, but enemies to me is reserved for like, I want to kill you. I have the power to kill you. I can kill you. I want to kill you. That's my desire, but I end up not doing that. And you can only really do that trope with fantasy. I think that she wrote Xaden and Violet's character in a way that they were like made to be enemies. Like obviously their parents and like everything that happened with Violet's brother and Xaden's dad and Violet's mom. Being a Sorengale and the Writer's Conjurant with a whole bunch of marked ones, not a great thing. She was very targeted. She was very hated. Her enemy was Xaden Ryerson, right? And then as the book goes on, they get to know each other. They start to love each other. I think it was just very, very, very well written. And I also think that Xaden and Violet's characters are very dynamic, and they were very, very well written. I think that Violet was a character who had to overcome a lot. And I think that she is a character that represents, she is small, yet she is fierce. Like, you know, she wasn't traditionally built to be in the writer's quadrant. She has frail bones. She's smaller than most. She has a very breakable body, but she overcomes, she pushes through the pain. I think that is a very commendable trait to have, and I love that her character has it. And with Xaden, we know that, or we find out that he has also overcome a lot, and I think he's a villain who was never actually a villain. I think that he's a person who is portrayed as a villain, is portrayed as the bad guy. He's the son of the great betrayer, but he's not actually, you know, and we learn that he actually has a soft side, and like he can love, and he loves Violet. And I love that about their characters separately. I love that about their characters together. Another favorite part of this book for me was the dragons. Obviously, I love Taryn and Andarna and Sigel. I think that the 5 of them really, really work well together. Their personalities, the 5 of them being Violet and Xaden and Taryn and Sigel and Andarna, I think that they really, really work well as a unit and as a family. Like Taryn and Sigel are mom and dad, like Andarna is baby, and Violet and Xaden are children. Like, they really work well together. I love how they can all communicate with each other. I think it's so beautiful, and the funniest thing ever. Taryn is hilarious. I love him. I love his relationship with Violet. I love the relationship between Violet and Andarna and Taryn. I think it's beautiful. It's funny. It's hilarious. It's one of my favorite things. Another one of my favorite things in this book is the found family. We have our favorite squad. We have our Iron Squad. We have Violet, Sorengale, and Riddick. We have Imogen. We have Garrick and Bodhi. And, well, they're not technically a part of the squad, but we also have, they're a part of the group. And we have Rhiannon, and we have Sawyer. And Liam, I love them so much. Liam, sorry. I love them so much. They work so well as a unit, and I will hate Dane until the day that I die. The last 50 pages, hold on to your seats. Buckle up, strap in, do what you have to do. Ground yourself, basically, for the last 50 pages of not just Fourth Wing, but of Iron Flame too. Like, the last 50 pages are where the plot twist is just gonna hit you. It's gonna hit you, it's gonna keep hitting you and keep coming at you and at you and at you until you are beaten and broken on the ground, and all you can do is stare at the wall and cry. I was nervous to read Iron Flame because of how people said that, like, Violet was overreacting and her character was annoying and she complained and blah blah blah. But if my life got turned upside down, if the love of my life lied to me, if not only the love of my life, but my dragon lied to me, I would be way worse. Violet has every reason to mistrust in this book as the next person. And I think that people hate that because it's realistic. She has every reason to not trust Xaden. She has every reason to throw it in Terran's face sometimes. Even Andarna. Every reason. And she was not overreacting. If anything, Xaden was getting on my nerves a little bit. So if you think about the complexities of these characters, the way they act make perfect sense. Was it fun to read the miscommunication? And was it? No, it wasn't. It wasn't fun. It was a little frustrating, but it made sense. It was realistic. If I were Violet, I would not trust Xaden either. I would have a lot of questions. And at the end of the day, she still loved him. That was not a question. They still loved each other. And I think that Violet gets a lot of hate in this book for absolutely no reason. Absolutely no reason. Everything that she knew was a lie. A lie. So imagine your life getting turned upside down and being okay with it and not questioning it, not being upset with the person who lied to you about it. I loved this book just as much as I love Fourth Wing. There is no comparison. You guys know that I am Akatar's biggest fan. I think I like Fourth Wing more. I love these characters. I love this family. And it's so hard to say that when the series isn't finished. It's scary to say that when the series isn't finished. But I feel like I'm there. Like, I feel like I bleed with these characters when they bleed. I went through my own spiral of theories about what's going to happen in Onyx Storm. At the end of the day, I spiraled so hard that I just had to stop looking at theories on TikTok and stop thinking about it, which, believe me, is hard. I don't think I've spent a night without thinking about these characters since I finished Iron Flame in Fourth Wing. And I don't think that I'll have a peaceful sleep until Onyx Storm comes out. And, you know, even then I probably won't have a peaceful sleep until the entire series is finished. But I'm trying to stay away from the theories because they're just messing me up. And I don't know what's true and what's not going to be true. So I had to step back. But yeah. These two books are probably my absolute favorite reads of the year. If there is a series that is 6 stars for me, it would be this one. These are all the books that I've enjoyed in the year of 2024. If I like move this chair out the way. Thanks for watching this video. Like, share, and subscribe, and all the other YouTube things. See you guys next time.